Hey everyone, Merry Christmas. Welcome to the Apptrepreneur channel, and this is a live stream. As you can see, we've got the tree in the background. Let me turn this just a little bit. There we go. I know, different point of view, but again, there is a nice tree there, and we want to show off that wonderful, beautiful, colorful tree for this news story that was certainly a Christmas gift to me, if for not a lot of other people. So anyway, hey everyone, this is Kevin, the Apptrepreneur, and this is a live stream video. If the video happens to go an hour long, for people who are new, usually the first 10 to 15 minutes are the most important aspects of the video. If the video is a lot less than that, like say 30 minutes or less, then probably the whole video is important. So that's the thing with live streams, you just never really know exactly what you're gonna get. So, and I just realized I have this there. Take that off. So, I know I've kind of been a little absent on this channel recently, and there are reasons for that. Maybe I'll make another video explaining what those reasons are. Needless to say, a death in the family has been involved. And that is also why a lot of planned Christmas skits have not exactly come to pass, because I'm not sure how attentive my attention on this channel is going to be in the near, maybe even far future. I'm actually kind of on the fence about that, and that maybe that should be another video altogether. But I figure, what the heck, it is 10:45, 10:50, I'm sorry, and I just got some really good news, or at least I just read some good news, and that is that CNN, the creative news network, has decided to fire Chris Cuomo, their #1 news anchor, and I think this is for the best. I think Chris Cuomo should have been fired a very long time ago, and I think CNN has a lot to answer for what they let happen. Now, for those of you who are not sure why I dislike this man so much, if I were to describe Chris Cuomo, he would fall under the same category as Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Don Lemon. And that is that these are journalists who would fail to get their journalism degree if they were taking journalism classes when I was taking them. Have to keep in mind, when I went to college, I was studying to become a journalist. That was going to be my major. I didn't quite graduate. I scaled back just before I could actually get it, and I do regret that to a certain extent to this day. But when I went to journalism, there were a lot of things that were stressed. Journalism was about facts. Journalism was about integrity. Journalism was about getting the story in order before you went to press. And Chris Cuomo, along with other political pundits, in all fairness, fail miserably at all these things. Chris Cuomo is not exactly reporting news. By the time he's talking about the news story has been going on for a while. Chris Cuomo is not necessarily concerned about the facts so much. In fact, Chris Cuomo isn't even delivering the information in a neutral manner. Chris Cuomo, along with his other political pundit buddies and rivals, if you will, is all about, I see the world a certain way, I want you to see the world a certain way, and as long as you're on my show, I'm going to take the facts and I'm going to interpret those facts in a certain way so that you are going to see what I see and you are going to like what I see. That is basically a Chris Cuomo show. And by the way, whenever you watch Chris Cuomo show, here's another thing. There's never good news. Never good news. Like, my dad liked watching Chris Cuomo, and, you know, he's obviously not going to be watching him anymore. And when he asked why I didn't like Chris Cuomo, instead of going through the whole he fails integrally with his journalism, he's not even very honest about the facts, I asked him, like, well, Dad, tell me something. How many times do you watch Cuomo and it's a good day? How many times do you watch his show and he's like, you know what, folks? It might not be the best day in the world, but gosh darn it, we're still in the greatest country in the world. We still like each other, and here's what we can do to make life better. You never see it. All you see is a man who fear-mongers and basically tells you how bad everything is. And granted, that's kind of what the news has become. You know, if it bleeds, it leads is a very real thing. A lot of newscasters lead with the worst news possible, and the good news is always regulated to odd times during the day when basically they just need to fill that time slot because good news doesn't sell. Even though YouTube was built on cat videos. So, you know, take that for what you will. Well, Chris Cuomo has really been blatantly anti-good journalism in the last year and a half. I would argue, especially during the COVID era, he has been just the worst anchor ever. I know people want to say Sean Hannity is the worst, and he's up there. He's pretty bad. But Chris Cuomo just took journalism and took a big dump all over it. You know, when he gets on his soapbox and he says, you know, if you catch COVID, you need to stay home, stupid. Ironically, I agree with that statement. But then what's Chris Cuomo doing? He's outside playing with his kids after just telling millions of his audience members to basically stay home, stupid. If you're sick, you don't need to be out. Well, Chris Cuomo apparently does not follow his own advice. What about his on-air little things he did with his brother, Andrew Cuomo, a guy who, I'm sorry to say, I would have voted for president, and then all this stuff came out, and I guess I'm not going to vote for him, and he'll never run for president anyway. But that is a huge breach of journalistic ethics. There is a major, major conflict of interest in that. You know, they're brothers. Chris Cuomo is not going to hold his brother Andrew's feet to the fire. When it comes to the COVID situation, Andrew was doing everything right. Trump was doing everything wrong. And they joked around. Basically, they gave Andrew a platform because it's pretty clear that Chris was trying to get Andrew to look presidential, if you will. And yet, it turned out Andrew had some skeletons in his closet. He himself did not handle the pandemic necessarily the best way he should have. And then when it came out that Andrew was basically not the nicest guy in the world, bottom line, some people started coming forward and complaining that he was not a great boss, probably not a good person either. At that point, Chris said, hey, he's my brother. I'm not going to talk about him. So that's just the way it is. We have to separate, you know, church and state and journalism. It's like, yeah, but you didn't have any problem covering him when the news was all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorn farts. That apparently is perfectly fine to, you know, talk about your brother. But then when your brother's in a little bit of trouble, now it's not time to talk about anymore. These are all things that, in my opinion, made Cuomo an especially sketchy journalist. And the fact that he didn't do any of his reporting, he was an embarrassment for CNN. He was also, unfortunately, kind of a good example of what news has become, where people want sensational commentary over facts. And Chris Cuomo, being the highest rated program on CNN, well, CNN was willing to let him get away with basically treating news like a celebrity show. And by the way, they are also doing the same thing with people like Jim Acosta, who seems to be more interested in... He basically became famous by picking fights with Trump. You know, you're a news journalist. You're not supposed to be making accusations of the president. You ask him a question and you move on, but no, he wants a talk show. So CNN's ultimately a bigger problem, but one of the reasons CNN is heading in that direction is because people like Chris Cuomo brought them so much money. Well, when Andrew's little secret got out and some information had leaked that his little brother had spoken to him, which would have been a huge conflict of interest. Chris got on the air and assured everyone that he was there, he listened, but he did not advise, he did not do anything. That ended up not being true. It turns out that Chris Cuomo, hey, repair your PC, welcome. It turns out Chris Cuomo actually was doing more than just listening. Chris Cuomo was in the room advising his brother. He was not only in the room advising his brother, he was making phone calls on behalf of his brother. He was contacting sources to find out how far the investigation against his brother had been. And in fact, he was even advising his brother on how to respond to the accusations in which he could kind of get out of this scot-free. And in doing so, Chris Cuomo basically got in the way of a federal investigation. And he compromised it. And this was something that CNN just could not defend anymore. Now, the first thing they did was they indefinitely suspended him. Indefinitely. Now, that left the door open, just a crack that he could come back. But tonight, and in fact about 5 hours ago, as of this recording, the hammer came down. Chris Cuomo has been fired, and it should have happened a long time ago. And here's kind of the sad thing about it. It's that Chris Cuomo has not been hiding that he's a bad journalist all this time. He has not hidden the fact that he is incredibly biased in his reporting. And I think we needed to acknowledge way early on, and I think all of the political pundits need to have these warnings. We need to say Chris Cuomo is not news. Sean Hannity is not news. Rachel Maddow is not news. Don Lemon isn't news. Tucker Carlson is not news. These are people who have opinions. They have a viewpoint. They take in the news and they say to their writers and their editors, here's what I want you to say. This is my opinion of what is going on. And if someone says, well, your opinion seems to be at odds with what is going on, does not matter. It doesn't matter. It's their show. They get the final word. And that's what Chris Cuomo is doing. Now, he got caught doing something so unethical that CNN had no choice but to fire him. They could not let this continue. But the thing is, there's still a deeper problem at CNN. CNN let it get to this point. CNN ignored the problem to the point that it got to where it got. Now, the thing is, I've had some scrapes with fake news, to be blunt, as well as at least some ethical problems. And here's the thing. When someone who is dealing with the news, makes a screw up, where they either get something wrong or they do something that might not be entirely ethical, even though it's not fun to go through these things, it is very important that these people are called out. Now, I'm going to relive some of these uncomfortable moments, obviously. But, I remember there were at least two controversies I remember. Now, maybe there was more. I mean, when this channel was actually watched by a lot of people, I was actually quite the controversial figure. But that said, I try to adhere to journalism ethics. I read the story, I stated the facts, and then I would tell you when my opinion would begin, so that there was no confusion. Before, this is the facts. Afterwards, this is my opinion. And then that's why I always encourage discussion in the comments. But maybe you see things differently. And I think people would like to know what that is. So comment below. That is the whole purpose of that. But I'm not immune to it. People make mistakes. First mistake I really recall making, someone emailed me something and I reported on it and I put their name in there. And they, they didn't give me permission to do that. Now, this was 5-6 years ago. It's been a while, so That was pretty early on, and I vowed never to do that again, and I haven't done that again. The other time where I was rightfully called out, "Hey Arthur, how you doing?" Was when I got an email that basically I actually even forgot entirely what it was, that Uber was charging something for like cars with good air conditioning stuff. Anyway, the email was clearly fake. It wasn't even spelled correctly, but it was a long weekend. I had just gone to Sacramento and back in one day, and then was going to work. I was sleep deprived, and I reported on it anyway, and I was rightfully called out for it. I took the video down. I apologized. I thanked the person for calling me out on that because they had every right to, and that's how I get better. Now, the third thing wasn't necessarily a lie. It was a scandal, and people still bring it up once in a while, and I don't mind talking about it because I'm frankly so over it that it doesn't even matter anymore. I did admit that a long time ago, and we're talking a long time ago. I was practically a different person. There's a couple nights where I didn't hit my targets, and I fake puked a customer or two and got cleaning fees. And I said that because it was true, and I was telling a story, and now once in a while someone still brings up, it's like, "Oh, aren't you the guy who did like the scam puke thing?" And it's like, yeah, I am. I mean, 6 years ago, totally do not care anymore. I mean, I actually think it's funny that people still think this like one thing makes me like the worst person in the world, even though I have not done it for a long time, and I didn't lie about it. Like, that was like the one thing about the controversy that was strange. A couple YouTubers said that I tried to cover it up. It's like, I'm not covering it up. I never lied about it. If someone says, "Hey, does it happen?" It's like, yeah. But that said, here I was, like, especially back then, I'm giving advice on how to drive for Uber and Lyft, and here I am admitting that I did this at one point. Now, even though the context of what I was saying, that I did this and it's wrong, some people said, "Well, but you should have never done it. You should have known better." And it's like, well, you're right, I should have, but we all make mistakes. So those were all controversies that I went through. And was the fallout of those controversies fun? No, it wasn't, but they were necessary learning tools for me. But the problem with a Chris Cuomo is this guy is so big that every time there was an ethics violation, every time there was a problem with his reporting, every time there was a conflict of interest, CNN would never do anything about it. They would just let it go. Like, it would be like, "Oh yeah, he's our number one." Oh, thank you, Arthur. I appreciate that super chat. So they would just let him get away with it, and that is what the real problem was. That's why people were so frustrated. Now, does Cuomo have his fans? Yes. In fact, if you go to his Twitter and he talks about the announcement that he has been fired from CNN, and he thanks the people he worked with and everything, it's a very nice message, not criticizing him for that. But there are people underneath who seem still oblivious to why he was fired. They're like, "I can't believe you were dragged through the mud. Like, we're going to miss you. Hopefully you'll be on a new network." It's like, no, this is not right. I mean, do I think Chris Cuomo deserves to completely be shut out of media? Not going to go that far. Not going to go that far. I do believe in redemption. I believe he should take a year or two off. Really do some soul searching, and maybe this is not the field he should be in. Like, maybe he needs to write novels, or maybe he could write screenplays for TV shows. Maybe he could have a talk show host, and this talk show is not labeled as news. It's just simply labeled as a personality interviewing people, sharing his opinion. Because, for all the screw-ups he made as a journalist, he is charismatic. He asks good questions. I mean, he asks questions in a very slanted way, but they are good questions nonetheless. So I would not mind if he had his own talk show and he could interview people. I think that would be interesting. But I think CNN definitely did the right thing. Unfortunately, they should have done it a heck of a lot sooner. This was basically trouble this whole time. And it's been brewing for a long, long time. And here's the thing. I don't even think Cuomo should be the only one. I am definitely thinking that there are other, people. Like all the pundits I mentioned, like they should all be scrutinized and given very, very strict warnings about what they are doing. I mean, for God's sakes, Tucker Carlson is making a vaccine special that is so one-sided, it's not even funny. Like, colleagues of his are actually quitting because they're like, this isn't factually accurate. Don Lemon, this guy does not even pretend to be objectional. He just doesn't. Like, and then you have the Sean Hannitys. Now, Rachel Maddow's not quite as bad, but she definitely veers in that direction. I remember when the Mueller investigation had come to an end, and she was like almost in tears that Mueller did not find proof that Trump colluded with Russia. If she feels that strongly about it, maybe she's not the best person to be an impartial journalist. I don't have any issues with Anderson Cooper. He seems pretty straight as far as I can tell. There's still some good ones out there, but these political pundits, they need to go. Or they need to be explicitly labeled that they are not news, that these are opinions, these are these anchors' opinions, and that these anchors are also going to be sharing the opinions in a way that fields their point of view. Like, there's a reason that for a long time, remember when Michael Moore, the documentarian, was making documentaries, and he was like routinely criticized by journalists because he made the most successful documentaries of all time. Fahrenheit 9/11, I believe, is still the #1 highest grossing documentary of all time. But journalists pointed out that he was loose with the facts. He edited his movies in a way where a particular point of view made it through, but the opposing point of view was almost never shared, or if it was shared by someone who was so totally out to lunch and so not thinking clearly that basically there was no way to take him seriously. And, basically the news became Michael Moore because, Michael Moore did not make the most factually accurate documentaries out there, but he made wildly entertaining ones. He made ones where there were stunts pulled and there were cheap shots and people could laugh at them. It was very cathartic to laugh at an out-of-context clip of Bush. It really was. You should have been in the theater with Fahrenheit 9/11. There were people there having their opinions basically reinforced, cheering at the movie. It didn't matter that the facts were kind of murky or that maybe the sequences of event didn't happen exactly the way he pointed them out to be. They were entertaining. What's that line in Gladiator? Are you not entertained? And I think journalism looked at what Michael Moore was doing and they decided, that's where we want to go. And the sad thing is, it's not even like you can't be factual and entertaining. Morgan Spurlock, the director of Super Size Me and Palm Wonderful Presents the Greatest Movie Ever Sold, he showed that you could make documentaries that were based in fact, in truth, and you could still make them entertaining. You didn't have to be dry about it. Just don't make things up. So now we have pundits who claim they're journalists. They're really not. And I'm hoping that Chris Cuomo's firing is the first of many, many hard looks at how these news networks actually present their news. And I think these pundits need to be either go or they need to be relabeled into something else because they're not journalism. They're not news. They're their own personal opinions. They're like this video right here. This video, I claim and I admit it's completely my opinion. Outside of the beginning where I was just simply stating what events took place. And then I'm giving you my opinion. So anyway, that's where we are going to leave this live stream video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the super chats. I will give another life update soon. There is a reason updates have been very, very slow. And it's not because I'm working on videos. We'll just say that. I'm working on videos on the other channels, but aside from just my general lack of interest in this particular channel these days, there is something that happened that definitely makes me a lot less motivated to work on videos in general. And I will talk about that probably sometime next week. But anyway, for the 8 or so people who are live watching me, thank you for watching. Thank you for giving a thumbs up. I don't know if anyone gave me a thumbs down because YouTube has taken away the dislike button, or at least they've disabled the ability to view dislikes, and I've actually got some pretty negative feelings about that. Maybe I'll talk about that one of these days. I know everyone else has, but geez, like what are you doing, YouTube? But anyway, that's where we're going to end this one. Thank you so much. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. And as always, flame responsibly. And hey, have a Merry, Merry Christmas.